Welcome to the podcast. Much appreciated. Let's ask your questions here. I almost forgot to do today's podcast because I was I forgot to download the cover photo for today's podcast. So I was like, oh god damn it, I have to do a cover photo. So I almost forgot to do this podcast because I was gonna do a cover photo for my um Malcolm Nance podcast episode. We are at 35 people. We'll let you guys come in one by one. You know, I'm kind of upset that there are certain things when I could afford to buy, I didn't buy. And this is just side talk until more people come in. So I'm a big pen enthusiast, right? And there's this one pen that was made out of porcelain with Mont Blanc. When it was being sold, it was being sold like for $2,000 originally. Now it's sold out. And now that I'm looking for it at a time in my life where I could purchase a pen for $2,000, which is a stupid number, it's $7,000 right now. W- w- where am I? I ain't spending 7K on a pen. Although I'm the type of person that might. I would definitely do that if I had a if I was rich enough to be spending $7,000 on a pen. But I'm not rich enough to do that, and if I'm rich enough to do that, I'll probably be helping more people than spending it on my on a pen. Ah, but side talk aside, since I was in middle school, I have been obsessed with Mont Blanc to the point where, God bless his soul, my grandpa was once gifted another Mont Blanc pen, a Safari, and I was still in middle school when I begged him for it over and over and over and over again until he gave up and said, "Take it. I don't want it." So, one thing I will never I'll cherish it for the rest of my life. But yeah, since I was a child, I've been obsessed with the Mont Blanc and been obsessed with Rolex when I was a child as well. And I don't have a Rolex, but I know that I have an expensive taste that I cannot afford. And I know this is the worst time in the economy to have that kind of taste. And I know that I can just continue dreaming until one day that happens. But it's not happening today and it's not happening tomorrow. We have a movement, we got people that we're trying to help and support. We're trying to create coalitions. We're trying to create movements, and that type of spending would be reckless, especially in a time like this where people are struggling to make ends meet. I just can't make myself buy something like that during a time where everyone is struggling. It's just I but my type of philosophy is rather not just spending money on luxury, but I do the research to buy things that last me forever. I like to buy things that last a lifetime rather than buying a brand name. So I usually do my research and I usually try to buy commercial grade or, yeah, commercial grade. Well, even if it's for my home usage, it's designed to make tens of thousands of it's supposed to make, and that's what I usually like to invest my money in. It is more expensive, but the way I look at it is, especially in an economy of consumerism, back in the 60s or the 50s, companies came out with something called a product lifetime. If you notice, old products last you a very long time and they're designed to last forever. But companies decided to have more of consumerism, and they came up with a so-called product lifetime, uh, and they want you to come back more often to buy their own products. And by doing so, they created the lifetime of a product. So instead of a phone lasting you 10 years, now a phone lasts you 2 years. And that is if you're lucky and using it right and you're not using it all day, and the battery is already like lasts you maybe 3, 4 hours, and then you have to put it in the charger. That's by design. That's not just because the product that's they design their products to degrade. That's just what they do. So when you look at commercial grade products, they're designed to last because companies want to buy something and use it for years and years and years without having to lose that investment value. That's just what it is. So you look for commercial product in your home. You think you're buying luxury because the price is at the same as luxury, but luxury products don't necessarily mean commercial grade or don't necessarily mean that they're going to last that long. You're just a lot of times companies have learned that if they charge you a premium and give you a lower grade product like Louis Vuitton, for example, when you go in there and buy a Louis Vuitton bag for 3, 4 thousand dollars, you're not buying uh the best leather in the market. They tell you you're buying the best leather in the market. They're telling you you're buying craftsmanship. They're telling you, but once you scrape off the chemicals that are on that leather, all of a sudden you realize, oh, that leather is actually that leather is actually average. So what are you really buying? You're buying a status, you're buying a symbol, you're buying an image. And you have to stop and ask yourself, what am I looking for before I'm buying a product? And that always helps you. And, I literally, in my family, I was the shopper. I was the shopper for the family, so I always did the math. I always did the research. I always did and I don't know how they couldn't find out that I'm gay because the whole family used me. My aunts, my uncles, everyone was dependent on Wajeeh for shopping, and I don't think anything would be gayer than shopping. But the reality is that if you are buying a product, you got to ask yourself, what am I buying it for? Am I buying it for image or am I buying it for usage? And if you're doing so, take a second and look at what actually is being made for amazing quality. Mont Blanc is not a cheap product, and it's a status symbol. And I know it's a status symbol, but also it's like collecting Pokemon cards for some people. For me, it's also a great product because it's light. Uh, the I know the craftsmanship that goes into making the nib. The nib is really good, but I can talk about that. That's not why we're here. That's not why you're here, right? Maybe I could do another episode about fountain pens. Sorry, but I get too many notifications from you. Please unsubscribe me. Thanks. Um, I don't know how to unsubscribe. You just go to my profile and click unsubscribe. I'm sorry you're getting too many notifications, but Maybe you can control the notifications from the settings. You can go and click don't get notifications from Wajeeh. But people usually are asking me for the latest updates. They're asking me to give them the latest analysis on the issues, and I can't control the notifications that you're getting. Now, if I'm sending you an article, you will automatically receive an email notification because articles do get sent out to emails. App notifications, I have no control over the app notification. I don't do that. That's not my side, that's not my corner. But if my stuff are bothering you, I apologize. I'm not. That's not the design. The design is to give you news updates and the latest analysis and education regarding U.S. Middle Eastern or Western Middle Eastern issues. So it's just that's how my channel is engineered. I have about two or three articles coming for you guys today. We've done the research yesterday. We're finishing up the writing today for two or three interesting articles about Saudi Arabia. I talked to you guys about I've talked to you guys a lot about, investing in education. Many people don't understand what investing in education really means. 50 years ago, open slavery markets were everywhere in Arabia. 50 years ago, we did not have roads, good roads. 50 years ago, we did not have infrastructure. 50 years ago, we did not have many doctors. 50 years ago, Saudi Arabia was a total third world country. The first and the best investment the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has done since it started was King Abdulaziz, the founding of Saudi Arabia. And I'm not a fan of the royal family, I'm just being honest. Sent three or four students to get their graduates and undergraduates to become doctors in Egypt. That type of investing in education didn't stop. King Faisal decided to start public education for women and girls and decided to open public schools, and tribal leaders came out against him, and they demanded that he would not have schools for girls. And he said, "You are not here to dictate what to do. The schools will open for the girls that wants to go to school. If you don't want to send your girls to school, that's understandable. But we as a government must provide that service." The Saudi government understood the necessity of investing in education. They have built a school in every tiny town and every tiny village in every side of the country. They hired teachers from neighboring countries to come and educate the next generations of Arabia because they didn't have educators. They sent their adults abroad and they continued to send them abroad until 9/11 happened in 2001. George Bush ended that education system. Then came King Abdullah And he came to the United States and visited George Bush personally. And they had a dialogue informing him that fighting religious extremism only happens when we allow education to spread and have cross cultural connections. George Bush agreed. And the King Abdullah Scholarship Program has started, and that's where I came to the United States. My dad, my mother came on a royal scholarship from King Abdullah himself, and I was their son coming to middle school in the United States, where I had a better education at the time than Saudi Arabia because I was a student with learning disability. My grades were C's, B's, F's, D's. I was a below average student because I didn't have the tools and resources I needed. I got access to hearing aids, I got access to paras, I got access to assistants, and all of a sudden I graduated with honors. Our kids need help. Our kids need an extra hand. Our kids needs an extra attention. We think that they're acting out when actually they're asking for help. I was lucky. I went to Manhattan High in Manhattan, Kansas, because it was at the time one of 100 best high schools in the United States. I had some of the best education the United States could give. I was privileged. And that's why you have someone like me today doing this type of shit. Without the investment of the Saudi investment in education, without the US investment in education, Wajeeh Lion would have been Abdurrahman Adnan al Khiyari, a religious extremist, writing and calling people for jihad. That's the reality. I came from an extremist religious family that wanted their son to be a mujahid, a religious fighter, a holy warrior, one that kills himself in the middle of war. I still have issues with my father because of this. I don't talk to my family because of it. That's how I know a lot about religious extremism. And that's how I know a lot of people who are on the blacklist of not being able to fly anywhere. I met that extremism eye to eye. I sat down in the same rooms of those religious extremism. But none of that would have ended without education. None of that would have ended without investing in the next generation. None of that would have ended if we didn't take time and do cultural integration. So the reality is that Saudi Arabia in 50 years went from being a third world country to a country that is leading change with a vision of reaching the of being the revolution in the next generation. Can they make it is questionable. But are they investing in the next step of their future? Yes, they are. They're looking ahead. Their leader, their crown prince, who's running the country on a day to day basis, is a 35, 40-year-old man. Young, full of energy, full of passion, and I am against him on a lot of things. I'm against dictatorships, I'm against monarchies, but I have to recognize the difference and I have to recognize the investment in the next generation. That's just what it was. In 50 years, Saudi Arabia has transformed. I think we could do better in the United States where we, in 10 years, can bring the US to a better nation if we choose to invest our funds strategically and smartly without foreign interests taking their hands and putting money in their own pocket. I say this over and over again that lobbies in the United States undermine US sovereignty and undermine the US interest and the American people themselves. These lobbies don't care about you or me, they care about private company interests. Our government protects property before they protect people. They protect profit before they protect interest. It is confusing and it is wasteful and it doesn't have the best interests of the people. If you noticed, you probably haven't noticed actually because you don't know. The last 3 years of the G7, the most powerful man in the Middle East gets invited to come and he chooses not to go. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over and over has been invited to the G Summit, and for some reason, he denies. Says something about, I am not there to be influenced by you interest or their interest. Yet, he shows up to BRICS. BRICS, if you don't know, is the new economic alliance between Russia, China, India, and Gulf states. The Crown Prince shows up at a place where he knows no one is there to influence his power or to influence his interest, especially when it comes to his personal goals. They are tired of a Western world pushing their interest and influence while getting nothing in return. Working with Russia and China is much less headache. The demands are all economics. No cultural, no human rights, no side talks. It's direct, business to business. Let's get it done. Let's get it over. The petrodollar is dying. The US currency is losing its strategic power slowly but surely. We continue to spend trillions of dollars into a military complex that is not owned by the US government. As I am talking to you, Homeland Security has hired a military contractor to build prisons specifically for ICE detention centers. Those are not regular prisons. They look exactly like concentration camps. Just like what we did with the Japanese during the World War, we are doing it again. They're actually not building full prisons, they're building fences, setting up tents, and calling it even. just like refugee camps that you see in third world countries. You will see them here. They will be fenced off and put in tents. The money that we put in there is probably going to cost us more than building the prison itself because we decided to hire a military contractor. Military contractors charge a premium. The United States, if you think with the amount of money we're spending in our military, we would own our own industrial complex owned by the United States government. We would have our own companies owned by the US government to make these buildings that we need to have. Yet, because people know people and people retire from the Pentagon knowing that if they set up their own private companies, they can call their friends and charge an extra premium. So you have a whole bunch of people working in the Pentagon for a little, getting out, setting up their companies, making billions of dollars. All of a sudden, we have a black hole that we're pushing in there. People retiring and putting money in their own pockets, setting up their own companies, selling the government, using taxpayers' money, wasting it in private companies instead of putting it in our own company. The US government could be reinvesting that money into our economy. Those big contracts, those private companies are screwing us over. That is our Achilles heel. We're going to Boeing and asking them to build our own planes instead of hiring the engineers and making our own industrial complex that builds our own planes or paying private companies to to build the plane. We're paying private contractors to make us missiles. We're paying private contractors to make us bullets and guns. We don't engineer that shit. Why are we wasting so much money? Because we're putting it all in the military and giving it to private organizations. Our education system needs that money. We can afford $1.5 billion a day to go to war against Iran and ask Congress for additional $1 trillion so we can fund our operations. And yet, we can't find it in us to have few $1 billion in our education system and a few $1 billion to house our citizens. Could you help make the US economy a little bit more prosperous, stabilize your income inequality, use some of that money to give back to the citizens that have been you've been squeezing? 1% ain't paying shit, and the low class, the bottom class is not paying shit. Middle class is all being squeezed out. Every penny that you are paying, Jeff Bezos didn't pay much tax. When Trump paid taxes, he only paid $600. $600? That's your taxes? Jeff Bezos zero. What the fuck is happening? We are we keep saying trickle down economy, trickle down economy, trickle down economy, knowing that it doesn't work. $750. Thanks for the correction. Why is Israel still standing? Because we're supporting them. And I listen. I think Israel can still stand if they play nice with everyone, but they don't want to play nice with anyone. They don't. It's either their way or no way, and which is just not a good way. And I talked earlier on Malcolm Nance podcast that the Israel whole strategy is escalation. When you say that our military strategy for every citizen or for every soldier you kill, we have to kill 10 or 100. What does that tell you? That is telling you that they are sticking with an escalation ladder, and that is a military strategy that they have been doing for years. Aid needs to be cut off. There needs to be some consequences. I'm not saying this because I'm against the Israeli government or against the Israeli people, but you do that with anyone. Anyone that does something wrong, you're like, Habibi, you get on timeout. The fact that there's no consequences is just encouraging the whole thing to keep going forward. By the way, I spoke with my friend Deborah Amos from, she's, I think, a form. She's definitely used to work for NPR. I don't know if she's still with NPR. She's a veteran news reporter. Used to be friends with Jamal Khashoggi. Um, a professor at Columbia University in New York for journalism. Just someone from the heavy class. So I talked to her, and we agreed that in the next 2 weeks I might have her over for an interview. We'll be talking about the Middle East. We'll be talking about Jamal Khashoggi. We'll be talking about Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking about Donald Trump as well. So if that's something you're interested in, let the people know that we'll be hosting that. And that we'll be working on something like that. I'm always working on making some interesting projects for you guys and getting in, the best of the best to talk to you and provide you with information. So just keep an eye open and expect some good information to come your way. Everything happening in America is either an actual mobster gift or resembles one. What are the questions? Israel is left holding the bag and its racist culture in Gaza, West Bank, Syria, and Lebanon has ironically created a common enemy, minding the historic division between Persians and Arab culture, custom, command, retribution. What are the Israeli survival options now if the U.S. retreats? Um, they. This is there's a lot of unknowns here. There's a lot of unknowns, and those unknowns are how much is Trump willing to back up Israel, and how desperate is Trump is to end this war, and whether or not Trump is actually willing to pull the plug of funding any Israeli military. Um, I think he should use. I don't want to say it out loud. Yeah, I don't want to say it out loud. I think that he has some cards that he can use to influence Israel. There are certain bills that he can use to put pressure on Netanyahu. Although I don't want to mention those bills because those bills I don't want them to be used and I want them to die, and so I'm just gonna keep it at that. I'm not gonna mention it. Uh, but fuck it, I'll talk about it. Section 224, where Israel is going to take full advantage of the U.S. military, still hasn't passed yet, being discussed. That is a tool that Trump can use to tell Netanyahu, listen, I'm gonna just tell my people not to vote for that. Now Section 219, that's right. I'm gonna just tell my people not to vote for that. He could easily do that. Uh, Israel has been undermining the United States. APAC is not registered as a foreign lobby when it should be registered as a foreign lobby. Um, and the amount of money, the amount of funding, the amount of blackmail, the amount of corruption that they're using is not conspiracy theory. We have actual reporting showing that the Israeli Mossad has not only been spying on U.S. officials, but have been blackmailing them. That is your closest Middle Eastern ally. Closest Middle Eastern ally. How is that your closest Middle Eastern ally? I don't know. I keep saying this. This is not my opinion, but Israel, it's doing on its own without us doing anything the work of breaking itself down in terms of Western support or the global support. We see them signing partnership with countries like Somaliland that don't really actually matter on the global stage, with all due respect to people in Somaliland. But in reality, the rest of the globe is looking at what's happening from Israel's side, and they're like, why would I support any of that? Like, it doesn't, even if I was supporting Israel before, all of a sudden I'm looking at this shit, I'm like, I can't justify any of that. None of that is justifiable. And the younger generations are blunt about what they see. They see it, they say it. Don't we give the Israelis more money than any U.S. allies? Yes, we give Israel most money that most of our allies don't get. And Netanyahu was saying, okay, let's stop this, knowing that Section 224 was coming, 219 is coming. So because he knew Section 224 to 219 was coming, he was like, you know what? We don't need, you should stop the financial support. That's exactly what they want to say. We are not taking any financial support, but we're using your credit card. That's that's what 224, 219 will do. Instead of us giving Israel money, we're just gonna give them our credit card, and they could do whatever they want. That's what 224 does. Do you want to give them your credit card? You guys love writing paragraphs in here, don't you? What did your parents study in the US? How does religious extremism present itself in Saudi Arabia? Has it lessened in the last 50 years? Good questions. My dad is a finance and accounting professor specializing in Sharia finance. He came to the United States and got his second master's in finance. His first master's was in accounting, and then he got his PhD in personal finance planning. My mother was a fashion designer, or that's what she studied, fashion design. And then for her master's and PhD, no, for her PhD, she switched to family studies and gotten her PhD in family studies. They both came from my mom came from Syria. Her dad used to be a judge, and he was asked to sentence innocent people to death. He ran to Saudi Arabia, and think three of his brothers were executed by Hafez al-Assad at the time because he ran away and did not issue the ruling for execution. He died at a young age, leaving my grandma widowed, alone in a country mostly run by men, and without men, you don't have anything. My mother basically grew up in the Wahhabist school of ideology, even though she was from Syria. So the thing is that you have to understand Wahhabist ideology. And I wrote an article recently about how Saudi Arabia pushed their Wahhabist ideology, extremist ideology on the world stage. Let me just share that. I'll add it to the I added it as a thread to my group chat. So my mom basically went to the Saudi public school. My dad went to a Saudi public school. The Saudis come from a specific ideology. They partnered with a religious clerk called Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was basically an extreme literalist with infidelity beliefs. If you would compare him to anything, or if you compare his ideology to anything you would have in the United States, it would be like the Westboro Baptist Church in Kansas, where those particular people believed that even if you say you're Christian, if you don't believe in my type of Christianity, you're not a Christian. That is exactly what the Wahhabist ideology believes. So they have went around the kingdom. Kingdom was about 2-3 million people at the time. The Arabian Peninsula was about 2-3 million people at the time. Not no more than that. The unification of Arabia, there was about 200 to 400,000. I think I need to go back into the article. How many people died? Yes, 800, sorry, 800,000 people genocide. So the Saudi tribe partnered with Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab and fought most of the tribes in the Arabian Peninsula, leaving the Qatari tribes, leaving the tribes in the UAE alone, leaving the tribes in Bahrain alone, because those tribes kind of protected the um so there was the first Saudi Arabia, the second Saudi Arabia, and the third Saudi Arabia. And they attempted to create the kingdom three times. And when they lost twice, they had to run away, and they ran away to some of these tribes in Bahrain and Qatar and Kuwait. I forgot the exact countries, but they fled to these neighboring small countries on the Arabian Peninsula, and they gave them some safe passage, and they gave them a place to stay. So they were left alone, in my own opinion. So the estimate is the Saudi kingdom assassinated and killed 400 to 800,000 people in Arabia and the unification of the Arabian Peninsula, believing that anyone that denied becoming a Wahhabist, they easily became an infidel. And the Saudi government, the Saudi militias were so extreme that they were even fighting the Shias all the way in Iraq. Iraq and Karbala has a very holy site where my great grandpa, maybe like 33 grandpas ago, Al Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, was killed there. And his grave is also there. So over the years, over 1,400 years, people have been donating gifts to that particular shrine, honoring the grandson of the prophet. Now, these al-Ikhwan, Ikhwan Atallah, in English they call them the Muslim Brotherhood, but they're different than the Muslim Brotherhood that we have now. Ikhwan Atallah are different than the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. These are called the Muslim Islamic Brotherhood, the ones that we're talking about in modern days. Back in the day with the Saudi government, there was Ikhwan Atallah, which is a different type of group. They're a religious extremist group that fought with the Saudi tribes to unify the kingdom, and they were playing a big part in the genocide of Arabia. Now, if you were a Sufi, if you were a Shi'i, if you were any of the other 60 sects of Islam, there was a good chance you were killed or you were converted. Yes, Saudi Arabia invested a lot in its education system, but it also created an education system that put its Islamic extremism on steroids. I was taught in school that not only Jews, Christians, infidels, and anyone that doesn't believe in God is the only God and Muhammad is his last prophet is an infidel and deserve to be killed by beheading. That was taught that in first, second, or third grade. And the books that were teaching that were also sent all over the world because the Saudi government, and with permission of the of Western nations, to convince Muslims around the world to fight the USSR during the Cold War. So the Saudi government was given permission to build its mosques all over the world and build Islamic schools all over the world and sending religious and school books that taught that Jews, Christians, and infidels need to be beheaded. What it also did, I didn't tell you, it also includes other Muslims that don't believe in the Sunni, Salafist, Wahhabist ideology. It said Shia, the Shi'i sect, are infidels and they also deserve the death penalty. That's how extremist the Wahhabist ideology is. So, and that's the public school that my mom and my dad went to. That's the public system. That's the education system that the Saudi government was giving. When you think about it, this has caused a tremendous pain for the world because we have given permission to spread an extremist ideology across the world without understanding the full repercussions of what it actually means. So we sent our own scholars, not only in Saudi Arabia, but to the Western world, telling moderate Muslims that whatever they were believing in is shirk. A shirk, it is like when you believe in, there's a specific word. Yeah, was polytheism. So polytheism is not okay. Anyone that believes in polytheism is an infidel, and they're all deserve to be sentenced to death. Now, my dad, I told you he's a direct descendant of the Prophet. His dad was a Sufi. Sufis are like the mystic people in Islam. They're very spiritual. They're not literal. If I would compare them to anything, they're very hipster. Like they're very hippie. They're dancing. They're about music. They're about reaching a higher spiritual being. They're closer to being monks. Like in terms of prayer, they have their own circles. They're very moderate. They don't believe in getting involved in politics in terms of a religious interest. So they're very, very moderate people who have a lot of spirituality. My great grandpa was the founder of the library in the second holiest mosque in Islam in Medina, Al Medina al Munawwara. He was Sufi, and he was there before the Saudi government existed as a government. When they became in power, they wanted him to remove his Sufi turban symbol and put the red and white shmar, the Wahhabist symbol, instead. He said, "You just want me to put this red and white thing?" They go, "Yeah." He said, "No worries." He kept the turban on and he took the red and white shmar and he put it on, on the turban. If I could find a picture of him, I'll put him out here. I can't find one with the turban, but that's him right here. Uh, Let me see if I can find a different photo where he's in the library. I found my grandpa. God bless his soul. Yeah, interesting. I can't find the library at the moment. Usually I can find it easily, but that's okay. My grandpa used to be gangster though. Not like a real gangster, but like he looked like a badass. That's my grandpa. That's my grandpa for you. And that's him when he was young. So about the Saudi education system, like my great grandpa was a not just Sufi, he was a Sufi sheikh, the founder of the second holiest library, the founder of the library in the second holiest mosque, and he was basically qari, a professional reciter of the Quran. I would consider him one of the sheikhs of the second holiest mosque, in my own opinion. But he was a Sufi, and my dad came out to be a Salafist, Wahhabist. That only happens when you destroy everyone else's ideology and force your own ideology and not no one else's. This is when shit started hitting the fan in Saudi Arabia. You have a people who came from very moderate families, came from very liberal ideas. All of a sudden, they grew up in a country where the education system was telling them everyone around the world is an infidel. At the beginning, it was a good way for the government to unite everyone under one flag. But soon they found out that that exact thing turned against them. And after the Cold War, 2000, no, 1992, 1991, 1990, Saddam Hussein chooses to invade Kuwait after the Cold War. Osama bin Laden comes from the bin Laden family, a father who's married to multiple wives and have more than 10 kids, considered to be a billionaire, multi-billionaire, owns one of the largest not manufacturing, construction companies in the whole Middle East, was responsible for building and constructing some of the royal palaces, and in fact, built and reconstructed the first and the second holiest mosque, Mecca and Medina, known for their amazing work. In fact, in the siege of Mecca, when Juhayman took uh, shut down Mecca with when they basically what Juhayman did is they brought in coffins, and every day, multiple times a day, coffins come inside the holy mosque, so everyone would pray on the bodies before they get buried. Well, Juhayman took advantage of that opportunity. He claims to be the Mahdi, the person who is a descendant of the Prophet that's supposed to guide us to the path where the Messiah, Jesus comes back and get resurrected, where they lead us to a better world. So he believed that he was Al Mahdi and used you know force to take over Mecca. The reason I'm telling you this story is because we hired the French to come over, and we brought our own tanks, and we aimed them at the Manarat. Manarat is this. So historically, Muslims that call the prayer, the I used to be a person that called the prayer at the mosque. They would go up all the way up to that tower, and they would be multiple people, and they would go up to each of these tower, and they would basically shout with the loudest, nicest voice they have, calling the prayer. Now, these were so well built by the Bin Laden company that even tanks with artillery missiles hitting them so hard multiple times, and they could not break them. They couldn't break them. That's how well they were built. And the reason they were hitting them is because Juhayman put his own snipers up there. And believe it or not, my great uncle was part of the Saudi special forces that worked with the French forces to open that siege. He passed away years ago when I was back in Kansas State University, bless his soul. But Bin Laden Company built that. Bin Laden Company built infrastructure that lasts for generations and generations. Uh, so they put the reason I'm mentioning Juhayman and him taking over Mecca is because I was talking about how well built those manarat are that Muslims would go up to and call the prayer from, just to show you how like trusted that family was. Osama got inspired during the Cold War and decided to go and fight the Russians and help liberate Afghanistan from USSR. When he was there, at the end, they established an Excel sheet on a computer. Someone sat down and made an Excel sheet with all the mujahideen, all the holy fighters that decided to join this war from across the world. Muslims joined the war with the permission of the United States and the Saudi government encouraging them to go and have the jihad in Afghanistan. So all when they went there, they all decided that they will make a network that if any incident like that again happens where a foreign nation decides to invade in a Muslim country, this group would step up. Can someone guess the name of that group for me? It's Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda means the center, the source. So Osama bin Laden made an Excel sheet with the names and contacts and information of all of the mujahideen that fought the war in Afghanistan. What happened next was Saddam invaded Kuwait. Osama bin Laden has holy fighters ready to go. He's well connected because of his family. So he reaches out. At the time, he was not the king, he was Prince Abdullah. He tells him, I see that Saddam has invaded Kuwait. I have holy fighters ready to join. You just say the word. The prince at the time wasn't too impressed. No, he wasn't a descendant of the Prophet. Osama bin Laden was not a descendant of the Prophet. So, and actually, Osama's family originally comes from Yemen, which is also part of the Arabian Peninsula, but it's south of Saudi Arabia. So he was originally not even, his ancestors are not even from like the Saudi territory. They're from Yemen, which I think if you think about it, I would call it all Arabia. So Osama got upset, but the Saudis did not want to have a guerrilla warfare. They wanted to end this as quickly as possible. And the Saudi and Gulf states' agenda of safety and security goes back all the way to then. Without safety and security, their oil production is stopped. Without safety and security, their infrastructure and investments and plans all get to a halt. A war is never a good thing for your oil production when it's happening on your land. When it's happening on your land. So the Saudis decided to call George Bush Sr. Habibi Bush, how are you? We miss you so much. Come, come, we need your protection. George Bush sent General Colin Powell, one of my favorite U.S. generals. Colin Powell arranges hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops embarking to go inside Kuwait and inside Saudi Arabia, and they decimated the Iraqi military to the point where I know this because I talked to my friends who served in that war. They would tell me the Iraqis had tanks, but they were Russian tanks and they were not advanced. They were from the Cold War and didn't have the latest technology, didn't have the latest bombs in them. So our tanks can be way out of their Iraqi shooting range, but they would be in our shooting range. And our missiles were so strong that they don't only hit the Iraqi tank, it hits the tank, explodes inside, and exit from the other side. That's how strong our missiles were, or artilleries, or whatever you want to call them, compared to the Iraqi tanks. So by the end of it, we would be lined up shooting a whole bunch of tanks. All of a sudden, Iraqis would be taking their clothes off, waving a white flag. They're taking their white T-shirt, waving it on a stick, and running away. And there was a road called Death Road. Yes, this is an actual historical picture. You can't make this shit up. Let's see if this could be. These are all cars that have been bombed by us and pushed to the side. Here's another image. We decimated the Iraqi military. That is exactly what the Saudis and the Kuwaitis were looking for. Osama bin Laden used this opportunity to say, look, the Saudi government that has been advocating for the Wahhabist religious ideology is breaking its own principles to stay in power. They're stepping away from the religious extremists that they have and they've been preaching to us, and they're working with the infidels themselves. Wahhabists believe that only Sunni Muslims are allowed to stay in the Arabian Peninsula and in the two holy mosques. So the fact that there was French special forces that came to help free Mecca from the siege of Juhayman was alone a big controversy. And the Saudi government till today denies that they have hired the French special forces to come over and help open Mecca. Osama bin Laden used that opportunity to help convince Saudis to turn against their own government and created terrorist organizations inside the government because the Saudi government itself pushed that religious extremism. So when I was telling you it backfired at one point against the Saudi government, this is where it comes. The Saudis thought that as long as they had control over power and they had the religious clerks justifying their actions, that they can keep going, doing whatever they want to do. Meanwhile, Osama bin Laden was setting up his connections, reaching out to his Al Qaeda communication, telling them that they need to get ready. Here's another thing you need to know. Once these religious holy fighters were done fighting the US war in Afghanistan against the USSR, when they came back to their countries, especially Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world, but especially Saudi Arabia, they were treated like criminals instead of treated like heroes. They were never given a warm welcome, and they were treated like they are the next most dangerous thing that could happen to the Saudi government. Many of them were blacklisted, many of them were thrown in prison, many of them were executed, and that made them even more extremists. So instead of them coming back being heroes, they came back looking for revenge now. You told us to go fight a war, and now that I come back from that war, victorious, nevertheless, I am being treated like the enemy. Again, when I tell you I know a lot about extremism and how to fight the extremism, it's not from anywhere. It's because I lived that world. Isolating religious extremists doesn't make them less extremists. It only makes them more determined. Any extremist, when you isolate them, they become more determined. They become more committed. It's live or die at that point. So it became very easy for Osama to organize his terrorist networks that started making suicide bombs inside the kingdom. Many people were lost. I know people who know people that were lost. I know people that were supposedly in my school that were killed because of these bombs. Anyone at that time knew someone that got hurt from it or knew someone that got hurt from these terrorist attacks. So we had our own type of 9/11 inside the kingdom by the same Al Qaeda. Osama bin Laden ended up running away, I think, to Yemen or Sudan, and from Sudan he found a way to Afghanistan. But that's a very long story that we can get to another time. But that's where Saudi Arabia started shifting its religious rhetoric. From there, religious clerks have to run their Friday sermon through the government. And if you don't use the rhetoric that the government tells you to exactly use, then you'll be flagged, thrown in a political prison, maybe even disappeared. We call it the black van. When we want to shut people up, we tell them, watch out, the black van. Meaning, you're saying too much. I am wanting to be thrown in a black van. Or black GMC, to be honest. We don't say black van, we say black GMC. Because it's owned by the government, and the government loves GMC for some reason. It's all tinted black, black over black, and that's how it's mabahith. Mabahith is the uh, internal agency. They try to fight terrorism with guns. They try to fight terrorism with missiles. They try to fight terrorism with anti-terrorism tactics. And they were successful to an extent, but they failed. They understood that it is a war of ideology that they have pushed themselves. So, how do you fight back an ideology? Do you fight it back with guns, water tanks, prison, Sending them away, it doesn't end any of that, believe it or not. What works is rehab. Government invested in a huge project to rehabilitate former terrorist members, former Al Qaeda members, welcomed them, gave them religious training to help them break off that extra religious extremism they have. They helped them get married. They gave them responsibilities. They gave them things that they can care about or would care not to lose. Why do I always tell you when you tell me why Americans aren't doing enough? I always tell you they have too much to lose. You have too much to lose. You have representation. Both of those things are there. So when you have both of these things, it becomes hard. Fighting extremism only works when you fight it with an ideology, with education. Comes back to my first point that I was making. In 50 years, Saudi Arabia went from being a third world country to competing on the world stage, being a member of the G Summit, being member of BRICS, being in the middle of the oldest world, and being the most powerful country between its neighboring nations. That didn't happen in a day or night, but it happened with large investments in education. We sent our students for free. We paid them to go and study. My dad got paid to come to the United States by the king. My mom got paid to come to the United States by the king. I got paid to stay in the United States by the king because they all understood the importance of investing in your next generation. We need to rethink what we are doing. And yet, Saudi Arabia is in the top 10 countries that invest in the military. They have their own military complex. They send their soldiers abroad. And again, they're investing in educating their soldiers. Yes, they're lazy. Yes, many things. But the point is, we would still be having open slavery market if it wasn't for the type of education push and the type of liberation that we have. We have modern slavery. We have other shit that would like many fucked up things in our country. Yes, we do. But it only took us 50 years to get to where we are today. You can do it. There's few things that you need to take care of. Limit lobby actions. Limit foreign lobbies from interacting. Use your money to invest in your next generation. Invest it in your infrastructure. Help build your economy. It will only grow bigger. Do not do not squeeze the class that gives you most of the juice. Otherwise, you will run dry. We are paying taxes regardless. We would rather see our money stay on our country. rather than going to fund wars that are not even in the best interest of the United States. Whether there are gifts, whether it's Section 224, 219, or whether it's the billions of dollars that we send each year to Israel, it's doable. You have the capabilities, the funds, and the resources. It's just up to you guys to make it happen. Someone like me found hope with education and found change to be possible. We see Obama when he talked about his library in the last 2 days ago, or the day, yeah, it was 2 days ago. He didn't start with himself. He started with the Declaration of Independence. There's a reason we go all the way back there. There's a reason why this country is a country of immigrants. There's a reason why this country became great. And there are many reasons why people are undermining this nation. Our adversaries are everywhere. We have hurt many people, destroyed many economies, and fought many wars. Rationally, people would have mixed feelings toward the United States. But believe it or not, studies have shown that majority of people, when they hate the United States, they're not hating the American people or the American culture. Studies have told us that they hate our government. They don't hate you. They don't hate your neighbor. Just like you are disappointed and tired from your own federal government, the rest of the world is. In fact, the largest anti US sentiment in the world comes from a US NATO ally, Turkey. Meaning that if you're tired of instability, if you're tired of ongoing wars, if you're tired of disruption of world economy, take a minute, rethink the world strategy, demand a different stance from your government, or change it. What's the ha about? I'm not sure. Go back to questions. That was a good question, Gina. Thank you for asking that question. That took us like a whole hour right there. I wouldn't have thought that it would take me that much to. There's a lot of explaining that goes into this shit, and if you don't explain it right, you're missing a lot of information. And I think if I summarize too much, I'm not doing justice for your information and for your knowledge. So I take the extra time to explain the little extra details in the story because I know that you don't know everything that I'm talking about. So I do my best to give you details. If that's annoying, I understand. But I'm just trying to think of the majority of people that don't know the details, don't know the backstories. It's helpful to explain what I mean by each point by going into it for a second. Although sometimes it's derailing. My question has to do with your decision to pursue graduate degree. By the way, congratulations, although you appear to already have doctoral level knowledge in the US, Middle Eastern politics. I actually helped my parents, both of them, write their thesis and research. So I would do their editing and I would help them do their writing after they finish some of their research. I helped them do that for their master's and PhD while I was in college and while I was in high school. So I kind of had like an entry level type of help with grad school level education. But I've always wanted to have my own PhD and I always wanted to be a scholar. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. The reason I wanted to get into it is I have built enough experience at this time to build on it on an academic level. The program I'm in is specifically designed for people who have 10-year experience and who are considered experts in their field and pursuing the the next step. My dream is to go to Georgetown. My dream is to go to Harvard. When I was in high school, I got accepted to go to a program at Georgetown University, but my parents didn't want me to go, which was really annoying and really butt-hurting for me. I still blame them for that because that was a lifetime opportunity that I just missed. I hope that I could go there at some point for my education. But Georgetown for diplomacy, Harvard for law would be nice, or Harvard for something else. I don't know, but definitely diplomacy school at Georgetown. Dreams, it's just dreams. But the university here, I saw that they have an amazing public affairs program, and that just falls right up my alley, and it's ranked 9 on the nation. So it was a good opportunity. I'm still getting treated from my left shoulder and my right wrist, and Minneapolis has, the Twin City or Minnesota has some of the best healthcare in the system in the country, and even then, this healthcare sucks, and that's the best that the country has to offer. If you have money, you can get shit done, but if you don't have money, you don't have the abilities of getting shit done. In fact, there's something called executive health or concierge health. And I learned about it from other doctors that are complaining to me about how horrible the health system is if you don't pay extra. So the executive health or concierge health is like a membership, depending on where you are, 3,000, 5,000, $10,000 a year. And you pay that to them and they basically answer your calls 24/7. They get you in faster. They it's just a whole different world. The U.S. has the best healthcare system if you can afford it. Otherwise, stay in line and wait your time to die. So that's why I'm in Minnesota. There's a really good health treatment, and I have been injured in my right wrist, and I have a left shoulder injury and a right knee injury. So I'm not the best in health, but I'm trying to take advantage of what's around me. And one day we'll see myself in Georgetown. We'll see. What do you desire to accomplish with the degree? I'm trying to basically do a better job at what I'm doing now. I'm also trying to become a consultant, and having a master's and a PhD really helps with being a consultant. My dream job is to become a U.S. ambassador at some point. Uh, but my job or what I'm trying to accomplish is help connecting people together, bridge the global cultures, help people understand each other instead of misunderstanding each other, and that type of communication really helps deliver that message to a larger number of people, helps me understand conflict resolution better. Just if you don't always pursue some level of education, you're not getting the. I feel like you always need to be learning, and if you're not learning something new, uh, there's something like wrong happening, whether it's on purpose or not. society is forcing you to be too busy with work, or or with life, or you are not taking advantage of opportunities. One time when I was a student at Kansas State University, I don't know if you know, the Koch brothers are in Wichita, and the correct way of pronouncing Wichita is Wichita. I've never met someone from Wichita that doesn't say Wichita. So the Koch brothers are in Wichita, and I was part of the economic club at the Kansas State University, and we were invited to go there. And we were talking to one of the senior hiring managers, and he was talking about a time where he met someone that had not one, not two, three PhDs. And he asked him a simple question. What are you looking to learn next? The guy answered with big cockiness, I've learned everything I need. Motherfucker never got hired. It doesn't matter how much you learn. As soon as you think you are cocky and you've learned everything, you've lost the game. I'm a life student. I want to always be learning. I want to always be going to school. And my dream, is to be able to be afford all of that. But, education in the US is very expensive. We'll see. But yeah, that's what I want to accomplish. What do you aspire to be? Seems to me you have accomplished a lot, and I haven't accomplished much, honestly. I don't think I've accomplished much. You guys make me to be a Malala, but I'm not a Malala. I'm just Wajeeh. Beware, but where do you want to go? I told you I want to be an ambassador. I will continue to follow your career and appreciation. Thank you so much for your questions. Are women rights progressing in the Middle East? Have things changed slowly? Things are changing slowly. It is a male run society. There is still a lot of oppression for women. Um, Women in Saudi Arabia, in particularly now, are able to drive. It's the last country in the world that allowed women to drive. I don't know if you remember the video in the UN where guy comes up from Saudi Arabia and he goes, Saudi Arabia legalized women driving, and he claps. He's so happy to be the last country that allowed women to drive. Um, by the way, we passed 2 hours. I have 9% of the battery left. I'm gonna finish this question. I'm coming to Ed. If you like this type of stuff, please like to. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching a recording. Make sure to leave a comment and subscribe, and then come to my Substack channel and support us here. We have grown an amazing community that is focused on cooperating and work together and making a difference in this world and learning about the Middle East. So if you like this type of stuff, if you like this type of investigative education and cultural education, give me a holler. Support me. I really appreciate it. Um, Women in Saudi Arabia now can open their own business without the male permission. But or she can travel without a male permission, but the father can still take away your rights. Parental laws in Arabia are actually quite extreme. A parent can tell the government, this person or my son has parental disobedience, and that is enough for you to go to jail. I've known people that have been arrested for parental disobedience, and the father can lift the right of the daughter to leave the country or the son to leave the country for until a certain age, I think, but it's still being abused. I heard someone once says, a wise person, it takes 10 years for a policy to reflect itself in society. So after gay marriage, we haven't really seen gay marriage really the LGBT community kick off and, people to fully support them until after 10 years. Now was it 2015, 2011, 2012, around that time, 13? Takes 10 times for that to reflect on a culture. So if Saudi Arabia just legalized driving, a few years back, that won't reflect fully until 10 years later. If we're allowing women to start leaving the country and start their own businesses, we're going to still see people inside the government abusing their power against women until that 10-year hits and woman really gets involved in everything. So it takes a minute for shit to implement. It takes a minute for these rights to fully take place, and women are gaining their rights slowly, but they're still being oppressed. Lujain Al Hadlul, the woman that drove her car protesting the woman rights to drive, was thrown in political prison. She was raped. She was sexually assaulted. She was tortured. She was beaten. She went to in prison with hair full of color, left prison with hair full of white hair, gray hair. And the only reason she left prison early is because Biden demanded that she would be released when he got elected. And she's still banned from leaving the country, even though women rights have been legalized. So what I'm trying to tell you is even if we threw people in prison for breaking the law after legalizing something in Saudi Arabia, they still stay in prison. So the road for women rights in Arabia is still long. There is changes. Privileged women do have way more privileges than other women, but poor women will still be oppressed way more than regular privileged women. Having a car is expensive in Arabia. Getting a permit is expensive in Arabia. Getting the education for that permit is expensive in Arabia. Um, Women were happy to drive in the beginning, but now they're wanting back their. I'm hearing some of them. They're wanting back their drivers instead of having to drive because they're like, it's kind of stressful. I would rather have my own driver. So I've seen some women say that. I haven't seen a majority of them. I haven't done any statistical studies, but I've seen some of them say, "I would rather have my driver back than me driving anywhere." Anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for coming in. I hope that you like this type of information today. I did more talking than answering questions. I did the story time of how Saudi Arabia pushed its Islamic extremism. I talked to you a little bit about my family and where I came from and who they are. And I told you how I escaped Islamic extremism with education and how Saudi government changed the whole nation in 50 years by investing in education. Told you guys that you guys can do the same thing. You have the resources, tools, and abilities to invest in your next generation. And I hope that you guys start talking about that within your friends and family. Like, subscribe, and share. As always, I like to say, مع السلامة, bye bye. وبالإنجليزي, goodbye. I'll see you tomorrow.